It's about the restoration of our republic. We want to educate, encourage, enable the power. We stand for integrity, honesty, self-reliance, self-defense, and most importantly, no compromise on our foundational principles. This is America's Voice Now.
Find America's Voice Now on Facebook and at americasvoicenow.org. Here's Michael Evans.
Good morning, America. You're listening to America's Voice Now. My name is Michael Evans. I'm your host this morning. Appreciate you joining with us. Thanks very much for being a part of our morning show. We're going to cover a number of areas this morning, including credit card tracking, not only domestic, but also international. The new Consumer Financial Protection Bureau is collecting all domestic credit card transactions, and the NSA is collecting the international payments. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that. Our next topic in segment 2 is going to be Obamacare and the Data Hub, and how the new rules are going to affect you. Now, doctors are being turned into federal informants because they are required to ask you things about your sex life. They are required to ask you things about your financial status, whether or not you have dangerous items in your home, and then they're required to rat you out in the event that you do. We're also going to talk about Congress's exemption from Obamacare, how they've exempted themselves and given themselves a free pass to walk away. And then we're also going to cover the issue of internet taxation and how the House GOP, this is the Republican Party, is kicked off a new internet sales tax legislation initiative that is going to attempt to suck even more blood out of the stone of Americans. How this is basically a scheme, another scheme, to essentially fund the bureaucracy that is actually planning, plotting, and actively working towards your demise. Our third segment is going to talk about borders and the violation of our borders by Muslim terrorists from far-off nations such as Egypt, Iran, Iraq, Pakistan, Sudan, and Yemen, just to name a few, and how you are being misled about the real reason, one, why our border is wide open, and two, about who is actually coming across it. And then while we're at it, we're also going to talk about the new revelation the other day that came out about 2,987 sex offenders who were released back into the community by the Immigrations and Customs Enforcement Organization. Now, folks, 2,800, almost 2,900 convicted sex offenders were released back into our society. I got to tell you, to me, and these are convicted people. These aren't people that were charged with something. 2,837 convicted criminal alien sex offenders were released into American communities in order to comply with a Supreme Court decision. Now, if you ever heard me say that the Supreme Court, SCOTUS as it's called, is not considered to be the final arbiter of law, this is a perfect example. And how the ICE organization, Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, could utilize that to construe or to define an opinion that allows them to release 2,837 convicted sex offenders back into our community is beyond comprehension. I mean, clearly someone was working at this goal, and you got to question why. I mean, who would sit down and say, I'm going to find a loophole to allow 2,837 convicted sex offenders who are also illegal aliens to be released into a community of, for all intents and purposes, mindless sheep people who have no idea that the wolves have been dispersed back into the flock. Our last discussion in our fourth and final segment is going to deal with Lois Lerner and the email revelations that the mainstream media, talked about for an hour or two, but clearly shows that she was deeply involved in the IRS scandal, and she has been paid an enormous amount of money while she is on paid leave. They're discussing with her ways in which they can give her some kind of immunity to testify. And I got to tell you, this shouldn't be a question of immunity. This should be a question of prosecution. While we sit here and clamor for an independent prosecutor, they sit there and try to figure out how can we give this woman cover and not convict her of the crimes which she has been accused of committing. People, we are way outside of anything that anyone could construe as normal behavior. Normal behavior on the part of our congressional representatives, behavior on the part of the executive, and behavior on the part of the judicial. I keep trying to explain to America that we are living in a police state, and rampantly they are raping and pillaging the Constitution as they close the pincers on the citizenry. Why, oh why, do so many of you not see the handwriting on the wall? If everything you see and write and do and act and think and feel and voice and discuss is monitored, don't you understand that this will all be used against you at some point? Don't you smell the danger? Don't you feel the danger? Doesn't the hair on the back of your neck stand up? Where is your situational awareness? Where is that small voice inside you telling you, danger, danger, danger? All right, before we get into our discussion this morning, I want to remind you that there's a ham radio course that's cranking up this week. In fact, the first one occurred on Saturday, but it's no harm if you missed the first one. It was more like an orientation. John Price, the ham radio teacher who's taught our classes before, is going to be holding classes every Saturday at 9 a.m. They'll be at the K Highway, South Howell County Courthouse, or South Howell County Ambulance Department building. It's right on the corner of K and 63. Now, all you got to do is make a right-hand turn on K, and go away from the city. Like you make a turn right there at the VA clinic and the bank. Between the VA clinic and the bank, you get down that road about not a quarter of a mile. You'll see an ambulance department building on your right-hand turn. You go around the back side of the building, and there's an entrance down there. They're holding ham radio classes there every Saturday now. And this is for you to be educated and informed about ham radio, its capabilities, its limitations, what you need to do to obtain a ham radio license, which would be one of the limited methods of communication open to us in the event of some sort of a system collapse with the phone systems and communications networks. And I strongly encourage you to participate in this class because it will give you the opportunity to know and learn the basics of ham radio operation, prepare yourself to take the test if you so choose, and or at least understand and learn enough about them so that you can utilize one. Let's be honest. In the event of a collapse of the communication system by a natural disaster, man-made or otherwise, whether or not you have a license is probably really not pertinent. But the simple truth is, if all you can do is stand there and look at a ham radio because you don't know how to operate it, it's not going to do you any good. So I'm encouraging you to please participate with this. There will be information posted up on our Facebook page and on our website where you can find more information on how you can participate in these classes. But what you can do is you can go on Saturday at 9 a.m. to the K Highway, South Howell County Ambulance Department building. It's a half mile from the Huddle House. Just make a turn between the VA clinic, the brand new VA facility there, and the bank. and go down there about a quarter of a mile on your right-hand side. You'll see the ambulance building. Please pull in there and make yourself a participant in that program. Okay. By the way, one other quick update. Before the end of the month, or before the first of next month, we will be on a brand new station. We've cut an arrangement with a station up in Houston, and we will be broadcasting in our old geographic footprint there, as well as our other stations that we're currently on that are around the nation. We, as you know, are syndicated at this point, but we're syndicated in all other areas other than our original broadcast area, which was in the West Plains and the southern Missouri geography. We are broadcasting out of Poplar Bluff, but we will be returning to the airwaves here in the West Plains and Howell and Willow, and basically the footprint will be what we had before, but enlarged. And so we'll be able to go down as far as Mountain Home again. We'll be able to go north as far as the military base up there, Fort Leonard Wood, and west even further than we did before. So that's all good news. All right, let's get on to our first topic this morning. Spiegel Online, which is a Der Spiegel. It's a German newspaper or online, newspaper and online organization. They've come out with a story this morning that the United States NSA intelligence agency is collecting the vast majority of all internet transactions that are involved, or not just internet, but all communications transactions, that involve Visa or any kind of credit card swipe. And so they are utilizing that to build a database on Americans who are using credit cards internationally. And they have a system that's actually called TrackFin, in other words, in Track Financial. It began in 2011, and it contained, at that time, some 180 million records. That's 84%, and this was back in 2011, so you can assume today that it's 100%, of all credit card transactions that were involving international. Now, you say to yourself, well, I don't spend money internationally. I mean, I don't care. Why would I care? Well, if you've ever bought something on eBay and you've used PayPal or you've used a credit card to purchase something from, a producer or a seller in China or England or France or Germany or Canada, your information's been tracked. And so they are then taking that and adding that to the massive dossiers that are being built on every single American, and they are incorporating that data so that they have at some point in time an opportunity to turn around and look back at you and say, aha, we got you. Now, for those of you who are naysayers and say, well, that doesn't matter to me because I don't ever do anything internationally. I only buy here in the United States of America. Okay, so let me show you why you're wrong. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, which is a recently created organization that came out of the unbelievable abuses of the what the heck was the name of that stupid legislation? It was created by I can't think of his name. All right. Anyway, the CFPB, which is the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, is now collecting all credit card transactions domestically. Now, these are documents that were obtained by the Washington Examiner, and they are collecting a decade's worth of private financial data on consumer behavior. Okay? So this is a data mining campaign, and basically they're taking all current records and they're collecting them. Then they're going back and they're looking at all past records that they have access to, and they're incorporating them and categorizing them and compartmentalizing them in your appropriate dossier. All right? So the problem, of course, is that this is an agency that operates underneath the Department of Justice, the Department of Injustice, and they are supposed to serve as watchdogs over the bankruptcy process. But it also is incorporating not only your credit card data, but every bankruptcy that has been handled as well. And so these data mining programs are going back in and they're looking at all your credit card information. They're pulling up all the bankruptcies that are out there, and then they're merging and meshing all that data together. And you can bet some of this will result in charges of people who may have claimed bankruptcy but then used credit cards that would have questioned whether or not they should have gone bankrupt in the first place, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. See, what you don't realize is that you may think you're not breaking the law, but I'm here to tell you that there are so many ways that you can break the federal law. If you don't know it, there are some 6,000 federal laws out there. Now, these are just federal alone. We're not talking about state. There's thousands and thousands of more of those. But when we are talking about federal law, there are almost 6,000 federal laws out there that you can break that are actual laws. Then there are literally hundreds of thousands of rules and regulations that don't call themselves law, but become and are de facto law because the agencies that run these organizations and have created these policy rules and regulations can utilize them to get you under a law. So they essentially utilize the rule or the regulation to sweep you up, and then they put you up underneath the umbrella of a law that they can then use against you. And if you're not aware of it right now, you know, every time that there is a violation of something that they don't want, which there is no actual law for under a criminal code, they certainly use the IRS then as the weapon of choice, the weapon of mass destruction of choice to get you irrespective. And so the real challenge that we have here is that what's really happening is all of your transactions, any financial transaction that you're doing is being captured and tracked. And when you understand the reasons why, you have to understand and you have to acknowledge and ask yourself the question, why is it that all of this information is being built on me and added to a database? Now, you know, the real questions and problems that occur from this are that most Americans are unwilling to sit down and acknowledge and accept the fact that the government is actually building these dossiers. And the reason why is because, you know, we've been told all of our lives, you know, government is truth, justice, and the American way, apple pie, you know, the whole blah, blah, blah thing. Well, the truth is that we already live in a police state, and you've just not been informed of the realities of it. By the way, that was the Dodd-Frank Act that created this new monster organization called the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And the guy Cordray, who is running this thing, he was the guy that Obama appointed to the head of the organization when Congress was in recess. The courts overturned that and said Obama acted unconstitutionally. Then they submitted his application through the Senate in kind of a secret hearing, and he was approved anyway. I mean, guys, don't you smell the treason and the tyranny everywhere around you? I mean, if you don't smell it, if you don't see it, if you're not aware of it now, I don't know what more you could possibly be looking at that doesn't really educate you and help you understand the danger of where we are. Now, these agencies, and by the way, there's a former federal bankruptcy judge who asked not to be named in this article in the Washington Examiner, and he says that the USTP should never collect data for other agencies. Doing the bidding of another government agency would be inconsistent with the mission of the U.S. trustee's role, quote unquote. So the thing that strikes me, there's got to be a lot of privileged information in that data, and that I don't know how that's released wholesale. This is in reference to your credit card data and the bankruptcy information that they're pulling. Now, what you have to realize is that all of this stuff is being put into a database. And so I ask you again, over and over and over and over and over again, find me one legitimate, valuable purpose and tell me what you believe is going to be the benefit of that database operating on your behalf. In other words, what good will come from a database that contains all of your personal and financial and educational information? Tell me one reason, tell me one thing good that will come from that, because I can't find one. And, you know, if there's a dossier that contains everything about your financial, your medical, your social, your religious, your historical information, your political and educational history, and it contains all your internet traffic over decades, all your emails, all your phone calls, all your communications, ask yourself this one question. How will this be used for my benefit? If you can come up with a legitimate answer, please email me to mike@americasvoicenow.org. I encourage you, I'm begging someone to give me an answer. So far, my email has been notoriously silent on this issue. The reason is because there is no legitimate functional capability for why the government would need a massive dossier and database on every American, other than for it to be used as some preparation window, or while it's being built in a preparation window for some nefarious great purging. In other words, to be used as an enemies list. And therefore, those people who are involved in and have their information captured and collected will be at some point in time pressured with that information. If you don't do this, we're going to prosecute you for that. If you don't tell us this, we're going to prosecute you for something else. What the goal of this is, and if you don't know how federal agencies work, let me tell you how they operate. They basically look to create a series of informants. And because federal government cannot accomplish all of the law enforcement on their own, and they don't have the manpower and the staff to get 300 million people to all do what they want. So what they do is they utilize informants who are coerced or bribed or some other way compromised to then turn around and spill the beans on other people. And so what'll happen is they'll take this information in your dossier, and they're going to have all your credit card transactions, domestic and international. They're going to have all of your medical information, all your financial information, all of your social interaction, all of your religious history, all of your historical history in terms of who you were, from where you came, and the whole basics from your birth to your death. All of your political information, all of your educational history. And they're going to say, okay, now what can we find in all of this information, including all of his emails, his phone calls, and all of the communications he's used for all these decades? What can we find in here that we can use to coerce and threaten this person with prosecution? And then they come to you and they lay out the case in front of you and they say, now, here's what we have on you, and here's what we're going to do to you if you don't tell us what we want to know. And what we want to know is who's got the guns, or who else are you working with that's not a member, didn't sign up for Obamacare, or whatever the case may be. And it's going to start small and innocuously, and it will be a graduated program of coercion and corruption, just like everything else. It will be the pot with the frog that is boiling slowly. And at some point, everyone in America is going to wake up and say, if I'm not a rat, I'm going to be prosecuted. And if I'm prosecuted, my family is going to end up being, for all intents and purposes, hurt, or I'll lose my children, or I'll lose my home and my car and my job. Therefore, I'm going to tell them whatever they want to know. That's what's happening, folks. We're being built and trained as rats to be rats. Don't you get it? In other words, this is a systematic development of a dossier and a database that can be used to turn you and roll you over for purposes of federal information gathering. You will become an informant for government. I promise you that will be the case. I've seen it done. It's been done to me. And when I refused to capitulate, I was thrown in federal prison for it. I'm telling you that day is coming, and you better be aware of it. You're listening to America's Voice Now. We're going to take a break. When we return, we're going to talk about the Obamacare Data Hub and internet taxation in this next segment. And this is going to be an informative show that's going to give you a lot of information. So stick with us. Come back from the break. If you're watching live on our streaming channel, just simply wait a couple of seconds and then click the play button again, and you'll be back on the air with us. We'll be right back.